Welcome one and welcome all to this Season 10 Episode 27 of the Ubuntu podcast. It's Tuesday the 5th of September and we're going to be discussing what's been happening in the news and community. I'm Martin and joining me this week are Mark.
Hello.
Hello, and Alan.
Happy 300th anniversary podcast thing.
Are you congratulating yourself with that landmark achievement there? Because I think you're the only one that's actually soldiered all the way through every single episode.
Well, no,
I wasn't on every single episode.
No, I wasn't on the last one, the one at Odd Camp. And there have been others where I've been on holiday and stuff. But no, it's our, collectively, community's 300th episode. So, golly. Wow.
Yeah.
Epic.
So, we're just going to do the usual stuff and nonsense that we normally do. Nothing,
pretty much.
Nothing out of the ordinary. Yeah. So maybe something to celebrate this achievement later in the season.
Yes.
In the meantime, Mark, what have you been up to?
I have been packing boxes.
Is that a game?
Oh, damn it. You beat me to it.
Yes, it's a brilliant game where at the end you get to move house.
Oh, right. Is that like the boss level?
Yeah, it's really fun.
I'm gonna stick with it. Can you get it on Steam?
Sure, why not?
It's funny you should say that. I did see some people playing a game where they're in cardboard boxes and you run around and you have to identify who is a person in a cardboard box or just a cardboard box. And everyone's running around in cardboard boxes with a little slit in them so you can see through the gap.
Amazing.
So not as ludicrous as you might think, Mark.
Yes. Well, so yes, I'm currently, rather than sitting at my desk with my proper microphone, I'm sitting on my sofa with my laptop and my headset microphone, so you might notice I sound a bit different to normal.
Yeah.
But next show, all normal service will be resumed in my new house with my new desk.
Excellent.
Hooray.
And when will that be?
Well, I'm moving in 2 days' time, so the day when we release this, I am actually moving.
Right, well, good luck with that, Mark.
Yes. Thank you. I hope I won't need it.
And Alan, what about yourself? What have you been up to?
I've been playing with a new toy, and it is an organic toy. It is a new cat. Yes, we got a new cat from the rescue place, the Cat Protection League thing, or whatever they're called. We went down there and had a look at a bunch of cats. Actually, it all started when my wife was sat looking at their website, looking at pictures of cats, and she said, "Oh, look at this one," and she handed me her laptop. So I filled in the form to please can we have this cat? Thank you very much, and put her email address and her phone number in. And then
did you order your cat online?
Pretty much, and then it didn't arrive in the post, I have to say, but she then got a phone call from them. Actually, the phone rang, I picked it up and they said, "Oh, it's whatever, Cats Protection League." I went, "Oh, you want my wife?" and handed the phone over to her, and she was a little bit surprised at this. And then we went down there, had a look at a bunch of cats, and they were all gorgeous. So many really, really nice cats. And eventually we were disappointed because a couple of the ones we wanted were probably not going to be suitable because we already have a cat and some of them don't like living with other cats. And then my wife saw a sign on the wall with a list of all the cat names, and she went, "Oh, Trigger," and pointed at that one of the cats was called Trigger. And so the woman said, "Yes, he's a really lovely cat. You should go and have a look at Trigger." So we did. We went and had a look at Trigger, and now Trigger.
Does he have a broom?
He doesn't have a broom, no. And he's now at our house, and he is gorgeous. And you can follow him on Twitter if you want to. His Twitter name is Trigger Pope, and he's also on Instagram.
Oh my goodness!
I tell you what, you need. You need
more time on my hands.
You need the cat interaction server that was presented at Odd Camp.
Wow, really?
Yes.
Yeah, there was a talk.
They built. Yeah, they had a Raspberry Pi and a camera and a gumball machine for dispensing treats.
Oh,
and a Android app.
Wow.
Although you're actually in the house all day with the cat, so you'll
true.
probably find it less useful.
Yes, he's been climbing all over my desk today. So yes, that's fun. So yes, that's what I've been doing.
Shall we get on with the rest of it?
Yes.
And now it's time for some news. And first up in the news this week, the world's most expensive juice dispenser has been discontinued.
Ha ha ha. What a ludicrous thing this was. And everyone said it was ludicrous from day one, and now they've gone away, but they took loads of money. Anyway, what was it?
So this ludicrous thing I've never heard of. So what is it, and why is it ludicrous?
Right, so this was a device called the Juicero Juice Press, and the idea was that it was going to be like the sort of you get those coffee machines where you have the little single-use pods and you put them in and it makes you a coffee. Well, the idea was it was this, but for fruit juice. So you subscribed to these bags of, I don't know, fruit, and you pressed them in your magical juice press, and you could only use the special bags in the juice press because of some DRM. And
oh my goodness!
And it made you some juice. And then they sort of got released, and they realised that it was just a bag of juice, and you could squeeze the juice out with your hands.
Or go to the shop and buy a carton of juice.
Or put fruit in your DRM-free blender.
Yes,
exactly. Yes, and so suddenly all of the people who'd put lots of venture capital into this went, "Oh, this probably isn't worth as much as we thought."
How did
all the people
diligence let it get this far, though?
The funny thing is, you can buy one of those juicer things, which is basically a spinning blade and a plastic bottle for 20 quid on Amazon. And I know, I have one, right? And it has two bottles. It's got a spare bottle and a lid, so you can put it on and take it to work and have the other one at home being washed up or whatever. And then you bring it back and swap them over. And that's 20 quid. This thing, okay, it's premium and you're getting juice, bespoke juice from some bespectacled beardy scientist in Silicon Valley, maybe, or it's just a bunch of fruit smushed into a bag, which is what I think it actually is. But go on, tell us the price.
For
$700 ludicrous dollars. It's ridiculous.
I wonder how many cartons of Del Monte juice you can buy for $700.
I mean, for that amount of money, they could handcraft, and go out and pick the fruit by hand and smush them up and put them in these bags. Yeah, sure. But they probably didn't. It was probably just mass produced like anything else. But yeah, all it was just squeezing them. You're paying $700 for a machine that just goes and squeezes a bag into a cup.
Maybe if it made that spectacular noise, it would have sold better.
No, I think you have to pay extra for sound effects.
No, you have to say Mycroft squeeze juice. Then it'll go in Alan's voice for you.
All right, somebody make that happen.
Yeah, but that's all gone away, so that's good.
Oh yes, you can get a refund if you spent $700 on it. They will offer you a refund for the next 3 months.
Right, okay. So urgent news for 2038. So everybody stay alert right now. Lots of things are going to break due to time being stored as 32-bit integers in some Unix systems and in particular Linux itself. So what this means is that we've been counting seconds since the 1st of January 1970 to increment clocks in Linux and other places.
We've been counting. We haven't all been counting these computers. We've been outsourcing this counting to computers, and that's where it's all gone wrong.
Yes, we have outsourcing counting to Unix computers. This is the Unix epoch, the 1st of January 1970, and we will run out of bits at 3:14 and 7 seconds in the morning on the 19th of January 2038.
Do you think there'll be parties like Y2K like that? Will they only be nerd parties?
Yeah, just beardy geeks sitting up all night to see if everything explodes.
Like things are going to actually explode.
This is how I spent my New Year's Eve as the new millennium rolled over, because we were all on watch to wait for the doom to happen. And in reality, we were all sat at home, bearing in mind this is 1999-2000, on modems, watching firewalls and things, sipping the last of the mulled wine, to spectacularly nothing happening whatsoever.
We were so confident that it was all fixed that I went out for curry. So I spent the entire evening with my friends in the local curry house. And that was very enjoyable.
So anyway, as I understand it, the BSD guys have already got stuck into this problem. And I think it's
they would do, wouldn't they?
It's a solved problem in BSD, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But we still need to do work in the Linux kernel and glibc and other places to stop it all breaking.
So is this any software which uses Unix time will need to be updated to make sure it's storing it as a more than 32-bit integer, basically.
Could it just use a 33-bit integer? Would that help?
Make all the difference.
Would it put it off for a few years?
Actually, it would put it off for
considerable amount of time.
Considerable amount of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
The delta between 1970 and 2038, I reckon, which is about 68 years.
So everyone should run into the streets, pant and panic right now.
Oh, well, I certainly won't be running out into the streets on the 19th of January 2038 because I'll be 66 years old.
Maybe if we learn about this stuff now, become experts in how tea time works in Linux, maybe this could be a retirement plan for us. You know, get Zimmer framed out of retirement for a couple of weeks to do some consultancy at extortionate rates.
Like all those COBOL programmers.
Like all those COBOL
came out of the woodwork in year 2000. Yeah, let's do that. Moving on. Fans of gigantic non-exploding phones can rejoice because South Korean purveyor of slabs, Samsung, have launched the Galaxy Note 8, which features a whopping 6.3-inch screen.
That'll be fantastic. Stuart Langridge will be snapping one of those up. I hear he loves a big screen.
He loves screens that have to be held with 4 hands. Yes. Yeah. Which, it's so for those who don't remember, there was this problem with Samsung devices that blew up, or caught fire, or may have had a minor electrical fault at some point, or not. But they were all recalled, and some of the parts were recycled into other things. But there's a new device, and it's the Galaxy Note 8. It has some interesting features, I guess. It has their own voice assistant.
Of course it does.
Called Bigsby.
It's rubbish.
And, okay, apparently only 30% of users have installed it. I don't know if that means installed it or actually used it. Because
the story that I was reading was, I think this is on the Galaxy 8, which is the phone which is already out, and the 8 Plus, which already support it. It sounds like you had to install it or enable it.
Right, so it's not pre-installed like Siri and Google Now and those kind of things. Right, gotcha. So
on that Bigsby thing, there's a YouTube channel. I'll say this slowly. It's called MKBHD. It's Marques Brownlee, and he reviews lots of tech, but mostly phones. And he did a comparison of all of the voice assistants recently.
Did he
and ran
use
them through
Mycroft
the same
as
series
well?
of tests. Unfortunately, not Mycroft, but I did reply to his comments and say, you didn't ask what are beans when you were doing this test, which is obviously the
canonical test.
Yes, exactly. But if you want to see how these different voice assistants stack up, go and find his YouTube channel, and you can watch them all being put through the same round of real world tests. It's quite interesting.
So inside this phone, if you care, is a Snapdragon 835 with 6 gig of RAM, which sounds comparable to the OnePlus 3T. Yes.
Yes.
Storage goes as high as 256 gig, which is quite a lot.
It is more than most laptops. But it's more than my mum's new laptop.
Also, still has a micro SD slot, which you can put another 256 gig in.
Yeah. I think once you get over 128 gig, you don't need a second SD slot. It just gets confusing.
Martin Wimpress says nobody needs more than 128 gig.
At the moment, I would prefer 256.
I will misquote you on that in 10 years.
Well, yeah. Yes. Yeah,
and the key feature is it doesn't explode, apparently.
Well, yet.
But it hasn't been sold. Nobody's bought them yet, so we can't really tell that. I feel bad for them in a way because I've queued up at airports where there have been, there's been the signs that say queue here and the signs that say, fast lane. And then immediately next to those, there's no Samsung 8s on this flight. And it's like, wow, they've really screwed it up now. It's, I've never seen a specific make and model of device that's called out as verboten from flights.
Yes. And did you notice the adverts they did on TV for their phones after that were all videos of their QA testing?
Yes. Honestly, we do test this.
And in other phone news, the Essential phone is essentially irreparable.
Oh.
So, yes. So we spoke about the Essential phone a while back now. This is a new sort of high-end phone which was being sold as a sort of having expansion add-on things that you could attach to it. And iFixit have done their customary teardown of it to see how easy it is to get it apart and replace the various bits inside, and they have given it a 1 out of 10.
Is that bad?
It's lower than any other. I think the lowest flagship phone was something like I think the latest iPhone got a 4 out of 10, which is pretty bad, but a 1 out of 10. They had to do things like getting the front and the back off, which are both glass. They were
glass
glued
and
on.
ceramic, aren't they, or something?
Yeah, so they had. I think they were glued on, so they had to heat them up to melt the glue, but then they had to freeze the surface to stop it breaking. And then even then, they managed to shatter the screen while taking the screen off. So they did more damage to it while they would have been trying to repair something.
This Essential phone is like the opposite end of the scale to the Fairphone, really. The Fairphone is a big chunky piece of plastic that you can like stick your fingernails under and pull the whole thing apart. And this is not that, basically.
Not that at all.
And I've seen various reports. I mean, this Essential phone comes from Andy Rubin, the father of Android, which apparently means he can make phones.
Well, it means he can make phone operating systems.
Right. But that's clearly not the case, because all of the reviews I've seen of the Essential phone have been very meh. It's a nice enough phone, but there's nothing to write home about that you couldn't get in other devices. There's nothing that makes it essential. And the one thing that I've noticed a lot this year is a lot of people are really concerned about whether the phone that they buy is rated waterproof or not, like properly waterproof.
You know why, don't you?
Because the iPhone has it.
Well, actually, there's an astonishingly high statistic of people that actually damage their phones by dropping them in the toilet.
Right, but and I don't dispute that, but it's really bizarre that only in the last year suddenly that has been the feature that I can't buy that, it's not waterproof. I was like, well, hang on a minute, every phone you've ever had has not been waterproof before this year. Why is that suddenly the single feature that defines whether you buy that phone or not? I don't understand it.
I solved that problem when we went on holiday this year. I found that on Amazon I could buy these 2 plastic pockets with like a seal that are like a big sort of necklace that you put your phone in, and it's in like this plastic vacuum packed seal.
Was this in the fashion part of Amazon?
Yes, I looked. I had to take my gold medallion off, obviously, before I put my phone around my neck, because otherwise I'd have looked ridiculous.
Of course.
Is it the same bit that you get the pocket protectors from?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's right next to the pocket protectors, and also those really nice little fold over clips that you put on your belt that you put your old flip phone in. It's in that section as well.
Yes.
But anyway, what you're able to do is these things are waterproof, and you can actually put your phone under the water and take photographs underwater and all the rest of it. And I got together with my family at the weekend, and several other family members had done this, and they were showing us their pictures they'd taken underwater of their phone in basically a plastic bag.
Nice.
So they took a picture of their phone underwater?
No, they were taking films and photographs underwater whilst they were scuba diving. And
so does it still conducts your touches through the...
Yeah.
That's pretty clever.
Cool.
Yeah, and they're only about like £6 a pair or something, so they're not even an expensive add-on.
On my honeymoon, we went to the Maldives, and I had a waterproof video camera in a big plastic box that was sealed, and I took it underwater, and I videoed loads of like tropical fish, and then bored everyone senseless for a year, showing them all this underwater footage, because I was like the only person I knew who had a camera that could go underwater, and I was videoing all these fish, and they were like, yeah, and we've seen all this underwater fish and stuff now, which I think says more about my ability to create compelling video than it does about the usefulness of underwater video. Anyway, that's enough of the news. Here comes a train. Here comes a roundup of the community news and events for this week. And first up in the community news is part 9 in a series of Who Knows from Didier Roche from the desktop team, who's been blogging about his continuing efforts getting Ubuntu Artful ready for the 17.10 release in October this year. So he's been blogging as day 1, day 2, day 3, spread over a couple of weeks. And he's covered quite a lot of detail about things that they're doing in the desktop team some of it being decisions that have been made and conversations they've had with upstream GNOME and that kind of stuff, and what the desktop's going to look like, because, for those who've been living under a rock, we're switching from Unity to GNOME Shell in 17.10. So there's a lot of work to do, for the last 4 releases or 5 releases where we've, not really done major work. That's all changing in this release. And so there's a lot of work to be done. Yeah. So Didier's reporting on it all.
And it's an interesting series. We'll have a link to this particular article, which is number 9. But the whole series is interesting because it sort of plots the transition of stock GNOME to the Ubuntu themed and customized version of GNOME, while preserving the ability to still use a stock GNOME session in addition to the Ubuntu version.
Right. So this was something that there was a bit of lack of clarity, should we say, back in April when it was all announced that we were switching to GNOME. I think in amongst all the news of the layoffs and the downsizing of Canonical, so some of the details may have been missed, but I think the goal from some perspectives was to have a vanilla upstream GNOME session, and the goal from other perspectives was, well, we want it to be distinctively Ubuntu, and we want it to be something that people migrating from their existing Ubuntu install can come to this and not have a jarring experience as they come over, and make it also easily maintainable for us going forward. So there's not 1,000 different extensions that we install by default and stuff like that we have to then maintain.
And more importantly, where the extensions that are being used in the Ubuntu session, they are compatible with the versions that you could install on stock GNOME. So as you move between those sessions, or maybe install the upstream versions, all of the settings transition backwards and forwards seamlessly as well, rather than just breaking.
Yeah. And it looks pretty good. I've got 1710, Artful, on my ThinkPad. And I've been using that quite a lot recently, and it's looking really good. It's nice to see the little incremental changes. I update every day, obviously, like a good boy, and test everything. And see the little changes to things like the login screen and little highlights and accents. And it's nice to see the changes.
You and I were both quite fortunate because we got to see a sneak peek of this sort of evolving over a couple of days at the Fit and Finish sprint in London a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, indeed. And that was an interesting experience. I've never had to, I've never been involved in theming a desktop, and I wasn't, super familiar with the way you theme GNOME Shell. And, we looked around at some of the other themes that there were and investigated what they'd done and what they'd changed and all that kind of stuff. And it was I found it fascinating how easy it is to change something in GNOME Shell, change the color of the GDM background, for example, but how incredibly difficult it is to do a load of other things. It's it really feels like GNOME has its design, and they don't really want you to use anything but that design. It really feels like you have to really work quite hard. Bearing in mind this comes from someone who's not done a lot of theming. It really feels like you have to work quite hard to override the GNOME defaults.
Yep.
Just me then. Okay.
Yeah, no, it can be. I mean, certainly there were bits of that sprint that were quite hard work, and there are other things that fell into place really quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
And what people may not know if you've not done theming before is there's 2 aspects to theming. So GNOME Shell has its own set of theming, separate from the traditional GTK theming. So in order to deliver a themed desktop now, you have to theme both independently and have them all join up and look cohesive.
Right, next up, Linux has doubled its market share since 2015, while Windows and Mac adoption has slowed down.
Woohoo!
Who says this?
This is according to Net Market Share, which I think basically takes analytics data from lots of websites and aggregates it to work out what people are using. And this has apparently shown that in August 2017, Linux was running on 3.37% of desktop computers and laptops, compared to 1.74% in September 2015.
Interesting. So this is desktop and laptops only, this market share measure. It's nothing to do with server and all of that sort of stuff.
Well, I think it's browser usage. I think
Right.
that it's looking at. So it's as opposed to mobile. I think is what they're saying there.
Yeah.
So desktop browsers.
That's not bad.
Yes.
Doubling your market share every 2 years. I think most organisations would be happy with a business metric like that.
Is there any breakdown of, what these numbers actually mean? Is it like just a whole bunch more Chrome laptops, or is it actually like all these people installing Arch Linux that I keep hearing about?
That's a good question. I'm sure you could correlate the data because they also publish browser usage statistics, so you could probably correlate the data if you were data-minded.
They do separate Chrome OS statistics from Linux, what we know as Linux desktop statistics.
Right.
So this isn't the steady march of Chrome OS adoption that is skewing this result. It basically means everyone's installing Ubuntu Mate, I think. I think that's the undercurrent of this
well done. Slow
analysis.
clap there for Martin.
But yes, just looking briefly, the operating systems it lists here are Windows, Mac, Linux, and Sun OS.
What?
Really?
There's that one guy out there who's still running
listening.
Netscape Navigator on Sunos, is he?
Does Solaris still report itself as Sun OS in the user agent? Or whatever the
Possibly.
open
Although
Indiana
it's reported at 0%.
Oh.
And the graph
just
for
rubbing it
is a
in.
wiggly,
Statistical anomaly then.
well, yes, the graph for it is a wiggly line between 0%, 0%, and 0%.
Well, they might as well just list Nintendo DS Lite in there as well. Like, how many people are using a browser on one of those?
There's more people using WAP than there are Sun OS, I think.
Yes.
Anyway, moving on.
Yes, we've got a couple of events coming up. Mark, what's the first event?
UbuCon Paris,
Ah.
which is on the 8th to the 10th of September, which is next week after.
This week.
As you're moving house, yes.
Oh yes, this coming weekend, in fact.
Yes.
At Parc de la Villette in Paris, France. And what's going on at UbuCon Paris?
So it's another one of the UbuCons that happen around the world. They're community organised events where people have the usual kind of things you get in events, talks, workshops, that kind of stuff, and social gatherings in the evening usually. And interestingly, this one, myself and Martin are going.
We are.
Cool.
Yeah.
Off to Paris for the weekend, eh, Martin?
We are. Yeah, I know. I can't wait to see Paris in the autumn. That sounds lovely.
Yeah.
Also, the French loco do astonishing work because they're expecting somewhere around the region of 5,000 people to go through the event over the course of the weekend. And they've got 300 volunteers to help steward this thing over the course of the weekend.
Mad numbers.
I know. This is on a scale that I've never experienced before. So apart from meeting up with all of our friends across Europe, which is going to be brilliant, I'm absolutely fascinated to see what this event is going to be like. I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to it.
And there's another one coming up, Martin. Where's the next event?
The next event is in New York City. It's the Ubuntu Rally from the 25th to the 29th of September in New York City, and it's a 5-day software hackathon, which is attended by major software vendors, Ubuntu developers working at every level of the stack, and community contributors. There's going to be quite the gathering in New York happening at the end of September, and there are still some non-sponsored slots remaining. So what that means is that if you're local to New York, or you can arrange your own travel and accommodation, then you can drop an email outlining what you'd like to work on during the hackathon. And those proposals will get reviewed, and if you've got a great idea, it would get accepted and you could come along and work alongside everyone else that's going to be there. So there'll be a link in the show notes where you can find out how to submit your proposals.
Awesome. Cool. And we're going to be at that as well.
We are going to be at that as well.
We go to all the fancy places, don't we?
We do.
Paris one week, New York the next.
London a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. My wife's getting jealous. Seriously. Oh dear. And I think that's all the community news and events for this week.
Do you use Google Plus? I'm sorry. Feel less alone by giving our posts a +1. Then go to the pub and tell your friends about the Ubuntu podcast.
And that's all for episode 27. We'll be back next week when we'll be going over your Entroware Apollo contest entries. Woo-hoo! And we'll also bring you some gooey love.
Sweet.
Excellent.
So we're finally going to get rid of this Entroware Apollo laptop to someone.
Yep.
Stay tuned to find out.
Maybe get rid of is selling it a bit short.
Well, it's been taking up space in my office.
Boo-hoo.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Stop that train.